Hello, lovely people, and welcome to the Comic Coach podcast with me, Em Stroud, the Comic Coach. Obviously, otherwise this wouldn't be the podcast of mine. And you know what? I've been having a lovely chat with a lovely guest today, and I just, I love doing this because I get to meet people from all around the world and we get to chat about stuff. And let me just tell you, she's very splendid. I've already made that decision. We have just met, but we are very splendid. So for those of you watching on YouTube, of course, you would have seen her just do a pose. For those of you listening, she just did a great pose. So ladies and gentlemen and brilliant audience members of the Comic Coach podcast, please give a very warm welcome to Melissa Dinwiddie. Oh my gosh, she's got a prop. She's got a prop. There was a heart thing. She's like, how are you this fine day?
I am so happy to be here with you, Em. We just had a great conversation before the podcast recording started. So
yeah,
I'm relaxed. I'm happy. Always love chatting with somebody super cool across the pond, as we call it.
I know. Now, my very smart listeners are going to recognise that that is not a British accent. So where across the pond are you today?
I am in California, in Silicon Valley, actually.
Knows how to party. California knows how. I mean, there's so many. Oh gosh, California. God, there's so many songs with California in the titles.
I know. We're pretty special.
Yeah. I'm now thinking of London. So obviously London Calling, there's that. And I'm struggling to think of another one. So I'm going to stop. And so Silicon Valley, is that because you massively love tech, or is that because you were there before it became Silicon Valley?
You know what? I was there before it even became Silicon Valley. This part of the world actually was known as the Valley of Heart's Delight. It was an agricultural center long before it became Silicon Valley. I was born here. I'm actually a fourth generation Californian. My father was actually from north of San Francisco, and my parents met in Southern California, got married there, and then moved up right after graduating, moved up to this part of the world. And then this is where I was born. And my dad got into tech. And I am not a techie, although I'm comfortable doing technical things. But I'm a creative. I do not come from I work with technical people, but I do a lot of work with tech companies. But I come from a creative background, actually.
I mean, this is why we were always going to get on, like you. I'm also, creative, but also hang out with tech people. And then sometimes I was asked once to go and do a talk at a developers conference, and everybody else that was talking about developing. I literally may have been sitting there thinking I was listening to Swahili. I had no idea what they were talking about. It was weird words. I can't even remember what they were. And then I stood up and was like, hi, I'm just going to talk, not code. And they were like, but they were lovely. And strangely enough, tech people can get on with creative people.
Yes.
I mean, you heard it here first. I think we've now already been deeply profound on the podcast. Right, now, Melissa, as you can tell, I'm getting serious now. All of my fabulous guests come and answer my questions around impact, who's impacted them, how do they create impact, and all of that good stuff. 6 questions. Are you ready?
I am ready. In fact, I'm going to give you a thumbs up.
Oh my gosh, she's so good. She's so good. She's got all of the emojis just ready on little sticks. It's very impressive. I like it a lot. Question number 1. Who has had the greatest impact on your life?
I've thought about this question a lot, and it always comes back to my parents. They absolutely have had the greatest impact on my life, not only because obviously they gave birth to me, or my mom gave birth to me, they created me, but I think about, my parents have instilled in me the values that I carry with me to this day. My dad is the kind of guy who, if, I remember, being at the store with my dad and him getting too much change, and he would give the change back. That's the kind of person my dad is. And that makes a mark on you. It certainly did on me. Yeah. And my parents are in a position now in their lives where they are able to donate a lot of money to causes that they care about. And that, they have always done that throughout their lives whenever they could give money to like they're members for the local public radio station, they're members of the Signal Society.
Okay.
which is like you have to give a certain amount of money to be a member of the Signal Society, right? And that they have their names read out as over the fundraising drive when you give a certain amount of money and you get matching dollars, and they're one of the people that like give the matching funds for those,
Amazing.
and like they are able to do that. And I have so much pride that my parents are those types of people that they give money in that kind of a way that has, those kinds of values have really sort of been stamped in me. And also, when I was growing up, I was always really an artistic, creative kid, and they really supported that. So I came to my parents when I was in, I think it was first grade, and I really wanted to take music classes. And they were like, yeah, great. If you want to take music classes, we're going to support you in taking music classes. Later, much later, when I was in college, I got really into dance when I was a teenager. No, it was this before college. It was, this was when I was, no. Okay. I'm getting my chronology mixed up here. I had gone to college for a year. I took a year off after college.
Right.
In order to dance.
Okay.
And then I went to UC Berkeley for a year. And then I was home for the summer and I was dancing a ton. And my dance teacher pulled me aside and said, "What the hell are you doing with your life? You should be going to Juilliard," because it turns out that there were 3 of my friends from the same dance school who had auditioned for Juilliard. Juilliard has auditions all over the world.
Yeah.
And they had an audition in San Francisco. And 3 friends of mine from that dance school had gone to the San Francisco auditions and gotten in.
Wow. And
my dance teacher pulled me aside and said, "What the hell are you doing? You should be going to Juilliard, not UC Berkeley."
Yeah.
And I, there were tears and drama. And I drove home in my family's VW bus with tears streaming down my face. And I pulled my parents aside and I said, and I remember driving home and thinking, I don't want to turn 40 and think, like have regrets, and here I'm so much older than 40 now, but at that age, 40 seemed ancient, and I pulled my parents aside and I said, "Mom, Dad, I want to audition for Juilliard and drop out of Cal, and God bless my parents who are very academically focused. They said, "Well, if that's what you really want, we will support you." So
amazing.
My parents have always supported my dreams, even if they haven't always completely understood them.
No wonder. Apart from calling your parents, what are their first names? What are their first names?
Ken and Sue.
Oh, Ken and Sue, this is that moment. We're just saying we massively appreciate you, Ken and Sue, for everything. And it's that thing, right, of them allowing you to be you, right? And also them just instilling that, as you said, that heart-centered, all of the values and stuff. So yeah, I can see why they've impacted you.
The other thing is also my dad, when I was a teenager, my dad worked for a small company, which we would now call a startup, that sold. And at a certain point after it sold, he decided to strike out on his own. And so he modeled being an entrepreneur. And he had a consultancy for many years.
Right.
And so he modeled that. And then my mom, who had been a stay-at-home mom until I was in first grade, then she worked as a teacher, a teacher's aide, and then a nursery school teacher for many years. And then when she retired from that, she struck out on her own. She got a master's degree in human development at the same time that I was getting a master's degree in England, by the way. I got a master's degree in England at the University of Birmingham. We were getting master's degrees at the same time. And she started her own business as a consultant, basically. And so they modeled for me this, entrepreneurship, solopreneurship. So when I graduated from college, I spent a long time sort of casting about not knowing what to do because I had been a dancer and I got injured. And that led to me getting a master's degree because I thought, oh, I'll go and become a professor. That's what I'll do. And then I realized that that was not the right path for me. And I really struggled for a while trying to figure out what to do with my life when after losing dance. And ultimately, I kind of fell backwards into a career as an artist. And the upshot of all of this is having my parents as models, each of them being self-employed, made self-employment seem a lot less impossible. That
Yeah.
seemed like this is something people do.
Yeah.
So that's another way that my parents really had a big impact on my life.
We love them. We're sending them high fives. We're sending Ken Sue high fives. From London, it's like, go Ken, go Sue. Woo-hoo. I love it. I love it. Question number 2. What keeps you motivated in what you do?
Well, as an innovation strategist who works with teams and organizations, and what I do really has to do with the 3 C's: connection, communication, and creativity, helping teams and organizations to create the impossible. And really what I love to do in that is connecting people to creativity, really helping them unlock their creativity as they, the company's goals is to, have breakthroughs and innovations, right? But
Of course.
me, sort of my Trojan horse, what I really love to do is connect people with their creativity. And so what really keeps me motivated is seeing their eyes light up, seeing those light bulbs go off over people's heads, and that seeing how people reconnect and those lit up eyes when they realize like, oh wow, I am creative. And then sort of a side thing to that, when people who feel like they don't have permission to fill in the blank, draw, make music, whatever the creative pursuit that they have felt like they don't have agency to do is, that really gets me excited because I feel like so many people don't feel like they get to do those creative things that they've been quashed down around. Somehow when they were very little, they got, quashed down around something. They have some kind of creativity scars around something. And I love sort of helping heal those scars and giving that back to people.
I so love that. And there's definitely, it's one of the reasons I want you on the pod, because there's definitely a similarity in terms of you being able to do that. And, and it's, I'm quite often called like the permission giver of play, because, or the permission giver of laughter. And it's like, this thing called work that we do, we can actually also have some fun. It doesn't mean that the outcome and the work isn't serious, but, you can hold a lightness of touch. And I think you're right. There's that beautiful moment where people reconnect with themselves, because we're all, as children, we are all creative beings. But I think creativity is so often put into the box of, you've got to be an artist, I'm no good at drawing. You've got to be a singer, a musician, I'm no good at singing. You've got to be a dancer, I can't dance. You could carry on. And actually, if you get a bunch of 3-year-olds, I think I've said this on the pod before, but if you get a bunch of 3-year-olds, they'll all be playing and creating in one way or another.
Yeah.
And each of them is right.
Yeah.
And it's just that thing of, so I'm not surprised that that's because I get it. That moment where somebody captures a part of themselves again is just so delicious. That's very good. So on that, it's like I thought about this podcast, question number 3, how do you play? How do you play?
Yeah. So, well, I have a ton of different creative expressions that for me are play. So I love to make music. I recently, it's coming up in July, it'll be 3 years ago, I took up the upright bass.
Cool.
Which is super fun for me. Learning how to play a new instrument is play for me.
Yeah.
I also play ukulele. I sing. I used to perform a lot as a jazz singer.
Nice.
I write songs.
Nice.
I'm also a visual artist. I made my living as a visual artist many years ago. Although the making a living part was not play, but I got into the making a living part because I love making visual art. Also, I'm an improviser, and getting up on stage and improvising is pure play for me. But even with my husband, just playing an improv like game together is, or with anybody else, is pure play. Playing, not that I have a lot of opportunity to do this, but playing games like charades, or there's a boxed game called Hoopla that has sort of a combination of Pictionary, charades, and other kinds of things all together, where you're, as a team, you're sort of racing against the clock together. So I like games like that, where you're not competing against each other so much as working together. That's my sort of team games. I prefer to work together rather than competition is not as fun for me. Also, going outside in nature is play for me as well, like hiking. So there are lots of different ways that I like to play. I love fiction. So like an easy way, that's kind of my prime way that I'm playing at the moment, because this is the sad reality right now. I'm so phenomenally busy with both my job and also this second job of trying to save democracy. The normal ways that I just listed of play are not getting a lot of my time right now, which is really sad. But I do read a lot, and that is a huge, it feels like play to me. Sitting in my bed with my cat, one of my cats on my lap or both of my cats on my lap, and reading a novel.
Yeah,
that feels
it's play,
like play
right?
to me.
Because I define play as anything that we're doing that we're purely focused on that one activity, and it makes us feel content, and there's something about a playful and all of those. And, I love chatting to other creatives who are like, well, I play at this and play like this and play like that. And it's like, yeah, play is the things that fuel us.
Yeah.
In then the rest of the world. It doesn't mean the rest of the world falls apart or falls away, but it's just that thing that lights us up, that is a really important state, because then that's how we counterbalance, especially all the stuff that's going on in your fabulous country at the moment. It's the play is even more important, because it's like, wow,
Totally.
have to counterbalance these things. So
yeah,
I hear you. Question number 4. In the last year, what's one action that you've taken that's really impacted your life?
Well, I actually have 2 coming up on almost exactly a year ago. So April 15th, a year ago, I went to an open house run by a speaker training community that, trains professional speakers. And at the time, I was, and I still am, a member of the National Speakers Association local chapter, but I wasn't really doing anything with my speaking. I had been speaking years before, when I was primarily a creativity instigator working with individuals to help them get creatively unstuck. I had been doing some speaking on stages at that point. But then when I pivoted in 2017 to work with organizations, I hadn't really done any speaking on stages. I'd been, working with teams and working with organizations, with programs and stuff, but not, keynoting or anything like that. And part of the reason was I didn't know what the talk was.
Right.
I didn't really identify, who exactly is the audience and what is the keynote. And also, I had a story in my head that keynoting was going to mean a shit ton of air travel. And I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do that. And so I just was sort of stuck. And so I went to this open house. And then the other thing was, this is an important other thing. When I pivoted to work with organizations, because I didn't come from a corporate background, I didn't have a corporate network, and I really didn't know how to sort of make this shift super easily. For a while, I was working with a kind of a coach to, learn how to sell into companies. And I had a lot of imposter complex also. And she said to me, it's actually really an advantage that you have this creative background. It's, I was feeling like, oh my God, I don't have a corporate
They would take me
background.
seriously.
They're not going to take me seriously, all that stuff, right? She said, no, it's actually really an advantage because you have this fresh perspective, blah, blah, blah. But she also said to me, you're going to have to wear a suit. Which, first of all, is not true.
Yeah.
But it did a number on my brain. And so what ended up happening, without me consciously realizing it, is that I really closeted my creative self. Okay. And so for about 6 years, I just wasn't really showing up fully as my creative self. And I started really kind of burning out because I wasn't being me
Yeah, of
in
course.
everything that I was doing, as I was showing up on LinkedIn and all the posts that I was doing and everything. It just wasn't being me. And so cut to April 15th, I was really a year ago, I was really had been working on bringing my full self back to what I was doing as, in my business and showing up more fully and, talking about the fact that I had gone to Juilliard as a dancer and I'd had this career as a professional artist for 15 years. I was a singer-songwriter and performed as a jazz singer, et cetera, et cetera. I was a performing improviser, et cetera, et cetera. So I was really working on that. Cut to here I was at this open house, and something about being there, I saw, one of the speakers was a poet and brought his poetry to corporate spaces. Something just clicked for me. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, my background is this huge asset that I really need to bring to the forefront, first of all. And second of all, speaking is this kind of like this Venn diagram of all the things that I'm good at, I love to do, the world needs, and that, I could be paid for. It's like the ikigai. So what the hell am I doing not speaking? I really need to be speaking and make it a core part of my business, not the only part, but bring it into my business as a big element. So that decision, and also this whole thing about, I don't want to, the air travel thing, it just sort of fell away.
Right.
So I made the decision to really make speaking a big part of my business right then. And that led to just this whole cascade of decisions. And as a result of that, I worked with a coach to help me really refine my distinction. I create the Impossible framework, came about as a result of that. I created my speaker reel, which is now up on my website. I completely overhauled my website. What else? Just so many things have come about. I've been really upping my outreach. I'm on your podcast. I've been on a ton of other podcasts as a result. I've been booking speaking gigs left and right. So it has dramatically shifted everything in my business as a result of that one decision. The second one that I wanted to mention also is a decision that I made in November after a little election that happened on November 5th.
Yeah.
November 5th happens to be my birthday. And that birthday was a very significant birthday.
Yeah.
And I made the decision that I needed to gather a community around me to sort of buoy each other up and keep each other active and taking action to defend democracy. And I thought, you know what, even if it's just a few people around my dining room table, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to send an invitation out.
Yeah.
I have to do something. And so I sent an invitation out. 12 people met in somebody's living room, and we are now almost 300 people strong. And that has actually become kind of a second full-time job for me. So it has dramatically changed my life, but in a really positive and, challenging, but also really positive way. Yeah.
Amazing. And, I think hearing all of that, isn't it interesting? You put some energy into something, both the speaking, and then you put some energy into, the small matter of saving democracy. And isn't it amazing how then different things just sort of roll and you're like, oh, I've got this, I've got that. And I think whenever I'm thinking about impact and whenever I'm thinking about how do we change or channel or shift our impact, it's just about paying attention and then putting energy into something. And then the rest of it will then be what it will be. But it's that conscious, okay, I'm going to move. Like nothing really ever shifts if you're just sitting and you're still. Being still and sitting is important when you're meditating. All that's good. But it's important just to allow ourselves to take action, whatever that action might be. And so within all of that links us beautifully on to the next question. How do you take care of yourself? Because you've got a lot going on, girl. You've got like this really, you're helping people innovate, getting back in touch with their own creativity. You're speaking, you're saving democracy, one person to now 300 people at a time. How do you take care of you?
Yeah, such a great question. This is an area. So I'm laughing because I do take care of myself and I struggle. And the struggle is there's so many ways that I aspire to take care of myself. And in an ideal world, I am taking care of myself in ways that I'm really struggling to take care of myself right now. So here's how I'm struggling at the moment. The ways that I shared earlier about how I play. In an ideal world, I would be doing those things on a regular basis. I would be making art daily, playing my bass daily. And just a month or two ago, I was playing my bass every single day and I like to do these doodles. Actually, I have some I can show you for those who are seeing on YouTube.
Cool.
I make these little doodles. This practice of doodling has been so amazing. It's a way of improvising, just putting pen to paper, and the fear of the blank page is something that everybody struggles with, right? But how do we deal with fear of the blank page? How do we deal with a blank page? You make it unblank. You just make a mark. And then you respond to the mark. And I like to think of letting my inner 4-year-old inhabit the tip of the pen and then give her free rein. And my job is to just be the bodyguard and not let the gremlins drive the bus. So just let her do whatever she wants. The gremlins are going to pop up and they're going to say, oh my God, that sucks. That's so ugly. And my job is to say, oh, I see that gremlin. Thank you for your concern. And just send the gremlin off to get a pedicure. So in an ideal world, I would be doing that every day, even for just 10 minutes. And you know what, Em? I am struggling right now to get a 10-minute doodle in every day. But that's like in an ideal world, playing bass every day, doodling every day, meditating, even for 5 or 10 minutes every day. Where I am doing a really good job is almost every day I take a walk, even if it's just around the block, and less sort of concrete ways that I take care of myself is practicing self-compassion. So noticing that I'm struggling and not beating myself up for it, noticing that like everyone struggles, everyone stumbles. I'm not alone. This is a common experience. And then having the ability to step outside the distress, the mindfulness to acknowledge that, and then self-kindness, giving myself a little hug and treating myself kindly instead of beating myself up for it.
It's hugely
Super
important.
huge.
And sort of hearing it's interesting because my response to, one of the ways that you've taken care of yourself was actually to create a community around you to respond to what's going on politically in the US. And actually, there is only so many hours in the day. So actually, I kind of view that you created that, and obviously it's grown and there's been all of the challenges, but part of that was a way of you taking care of yourself because so that you didn't feel isolated. It might just be that at this period of time, the play of the music has to shift because it's the play of the community, but actually they're all ways of taking care of self. And then, like you say, you just little pockets and, maybe you just start by the next time the 300 of you are all hanging out, maybe you just start by just playing the bass to get everybody in the mood at the start. And you go, let's just start with some music. So maybe just put them into things. So, but I'm also really grateful for you being honest, because I think it is hard. We all know, like we've all read enough. If you're listening to this podcast, you definitely are in a place where you're pretty privileged and you're doing all right in the grand scheme of life, right? But sometimes life is hard and there are challenges, sometimes external, sometimes internal, sometimes both. And it is that thing. It's just about being kind to yourself. And some weeks, you know what? You're not going to go to the gym as many times as you wanted to go, or you're not going to play as much, or you're not going to meditate as much. And that thing of like, and it's okay. I think quite often people are like, I've got to have my most perfect self-care and I've got to be perfect even in the self-care world. And otherwise I'm just letting myself down. Fa-ching, fa-ching, fa-ching. And I'm like, whoa, the lightness of touch. It's like, it's okay. And, and it sounds like actually in the grand scheme of things, it's okay.
The
and,
other thing,
it's that thing. Yeah,
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to share is, there's always going to be periods of overall balance includes periods of wacky out of balance. And my life right now is wacky out of balance. And part of self-care is really acknowledging and noticing, really self-awareness and really noticing what's going on. Excuse me. And my golden formula is self-awareness plus self-compassion equals the key to everything good. And having that self-awareness and also being able to put my attention on what's going well. So for example, yes, I'm really struggling to get in creativity, my doodle time, even 10 minutes. I'm really struggling with that right now, but I'm doing a really good job of prioritizing sleep. Even if I get to bed very late, because I'm trying to get a newsletter out, I let myself sleep in the morning. So it's not
Amazing.
ideal because sleep hygiene is important, and getting to bed at the same time I know is really important, but still I'm really prioritizing giving myself time to sleep. So, bringing my focus continually back, just like in meditation, we bring our focus back to breath. I'm continually working to bring my focus back to what's going well instead of beating myself up for what I'm not doing according to what I would like to be doing.
Awesome.
So that's a way that I work to take care of myself, is just keep bringing my focus back to what's going well.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's a thing that people just dismiss. It's like, well, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. But what I didn't do was that. And it's like, come on, people, find the kindness. And then finally, what have you been thinking about in the last couple of days? What's been really ticking over in your head?
Well, I kind of have two things that are constantly on my mind. One is organizing to save democracy, and the other is my business.
Yeah.
And right now in my business, on organizing to save democracy, I feel like my job is really kind of the cheerleader and morale booster and really keeping people going. And my business, right at the moment, I'm kind of treading water, but I'm working on a book, and I also I've had podcasts in the past. My last podcast I shelved actually several years ago now, around the time not long after I pivoted to start my consultancy. But I've been wanting for a long time to start a new podcast, and I've been trying to figure out what that might be. And now I want to sort of write the new book, and which is going to be all around what I have to share as a former artist that is beneficial to tech leaders, basically. And the former artist guide is kind of the placeholder, part of the placeholder title. And I want to start a podcast that will actually invite C-suite leaders on to talk with me about innovation in their organizations. And so I really want to spend some time brainstorming around the podcast and what questions I might ask and things like that. And I just haven't been able to carve out the time to really work on that. But those are some of the things that I've been
I love
about.
asking that question because you just never know. Because I remember I was asking somebody and she was like, I'm moving house. She's like, that's the only thing I'm thinking about. I've got no brain power for anything else. And we'd had this really deep conversation about where she was in terms of like her business and everything else. And she's like, I'm moving house. And it's that thing, right? Our brains, in the last couple of days, you are, the archetypal creative entrepreneur, right? I've got this and then I've got that and I've got these thoughts and they're going through, and it's like, that's why I like asking the question, because it's like, we all have these different things that are happening. And sometimes it might not even seem the obvious, it's like, oh yeah, I've got a new podcast and it's just here and it's emerging. And when I have a bit more time, I'll think about it some more, but it's there in the last couple of days. And it's like, bish, bash, bosh. I could talk to you for hours about everything and so many different things, but I'm aware of your time and of course my good listeners' time. How do people find you and follow you and all of your brilliance and what you're doing in the United States of America and worldwide?
Well, you can always find me at my website, which is my name, melissadinwiddie.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Melissa Dinwiddie. You can find me on YouTube at Melissa Dinwiddie.
No way. We're shocked.
Yes.
No, what?
You can find me on Instagram. It breaks the pattern. Instagram is at _creative_life. A creative life with underscores in between the words.
Well,
because when I started my Instagram account, they didn't have enough characters for me to use Melissa Dinwiddie. So
I mean,
anyway,
rude.
and I also have a special bonus goodie for just for your listeners. I created a special link. It is, I'm looking at it right now. It is, oh, and actually, you know what? I have a QR code that you can see right here on YouTube. Let's see where. There we go.
Yeah, just there. Look at you with your QR
I know.
code popping up on the screen.
Fancy.
Yeah.
And you can, the link is bit.ly/comic coach thank you, all lowercase. Bit.ly
Awesome.
/comic coach thank you. And this will take you to a page where it does ask for a name and email address, but it will not add you to any list. And it asks for a little bit of feedback, and it will give you my impact innovation checklist. And it's a little,
Love it.
yeah, a little goodie that will help spark your creativity.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, all of those things will be in the links of the show notes. Everybody will be able to get it. And thank you for that. That's very kind. And I'm sure my listeners will be like, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to do that. And they obviously have different voices. I know you have different voices. That was just what I decided to do right now. As I knew it was going to be, been an absolute joy having you on the Comic Coach podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation that I had with Melissa. It's so interesting, isn't it? The things that are going on in the world and how we respond. Massive kudos to her for setting up a community, to make sure that, democracy is okay over in the United States. But I think over and above that, the piece that really landed with me was that thing about kindness and kindness to self. And hearing somebody that had so many different ways to play, who was so well versed in the creative practice, the benefit of it, the playful practice and the playful thing of life, and hearing how that right now has fallen to the wayside because all of these other things have happening, really did make me think it's like sometimes life does really take over, right? And I think that part of the conversation where it was like, you still just have to try and meet yourself with kindness. And I think in this world that we've got right now, right, it's fair to say the world's in quite a weird place. And in many ways, it's quite a dark place. If you're just doing your best, if you're listening to this, if you are doing your best every day, well done. That's it. That's it. That's all any of us can control, right? And if doing our best sometimes means, not playing or not meditating and, I haven't been to the gym enough or whatever it might be because other things have taken over, you know what? That's okay. It's okay. And that whole idea about coming back to self-compassion has never felt more important. Because if we're not kind to ourselves, if we're not really kind to ourselves, then it's really hard to be kind to other people, especially to be kind or to find the kindness with other people that seem so opposite how we think or how we are behaving. And in this world right now, as I listen and watch and see various different things imploding, exploding, and various, cogitations, debate, anger, poverty, all of the stuff, right? It's just taking that breath and going, you're okay. Right now, you're okay. You're safe. And I think sometimes those very simple things in a time of such uncertainty, in a time where things are so challenging, it just comes back to the simple things of going, yeah, like Melissa said, give yourself a little hug, going gentle on self. And it's a funny thing, right? There's a lot of people in the UK talking about adolescence, of which it is an extraordinary piece of TV and a piece of filmmaking and an artwork that's super important because it has raised the conversations that I think all of us as parents need to have and have to be brave enough to challenge ourselves about what is going on in the internet and what is going on in the world and what do our young people witness and see. But it's also really important, and I said this to somebody I know, it's also really important to acknowledge that you don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch the news. This constant filling of our heads about things that are negative, only do it when you're in a good place. Adolescence is an extraordinarily well-written, well-made, well-thought-through piece of drama, but it is a piece of drama. And if you are feeling stressed, high of anxiety, overwhelmed, don't watch it. Watch some comedy. Watch something that makes you laugh. And so on that, as a random tangent, if you haven't watched on Amazon Last One Laughing, do watch it. It's genuinely hilarious. It's really made me laugh. And I think, to come back to the conversation I had with Melissa, it's doing those small acts of kindness to ourselves that can really help. So yeah, go laugh. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Comic Coach podcast. Oh my word, I don't know what that was. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Comic Coach podcast. There we go, better. With me, Em Stroud, as ever. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you listening, liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all those good things. If you like it, tell one person about it, because that's how we can make the world just feel a little bit better, feel a little bit kinder. And I'll catch up with you next week. Look after yourself. Keep being kind.